In 1900, a diver pulled a piece of corroded bronze from the bottom of the ocean. It sat in a museum drawer for 2 years. Nobody cared. Nobody looked twice. Then someone noticed a gear inside it. A perfectly cut, mathematically precise gear inside an object that was 2,000 years old. What they found when they finally looked closer didn't just surprise archaeologists, it rewrote everything we thought we knew about what ancient people were capable of. And that's just number 1 on today's list. 7 discoveries, all real, all sitting in museums you can visit tomorrow. Before we begin, subscribe. You'll understand why in a moment. Discovery number 1, the Antikythera mechanism, Greece. The year is 1900. A group of Greek sponge divers gets caught in a storm near the small island of Antikythera and decides to wait it out by diving the local waters. One of them goes down to about 60 meters and comes back up screaming. He tells the captain there are dead bodies on the seafloor, dozens of them. The captain goes down himself. What he finds isn't a cemetery. It's a Roman cargo ship that sank around 85 BC, and what looked like bodies were marble statues, lying in the sand for 2,000 years. They spent months pulling up treasures, statues, coins, jewelry, glassware. And among all of it, one unremarkable lump of corroded bronze the size of a shoebox. It sat in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens for 2 years before anyone paid attention to it. Then a politician named Spiridon Stais noticed a crack in the corrosion. And inside the crack, a gear, small, perfectly cut, ancient. What followed was one of the longest scientific investigations in archaeological history. Over 100 years of analysis, X-rays, 3D scanning, and tomography. And what researchers eventually mapped inside that corroded lump changed everything. 37 bronze gears, the largest 13 centimeters wide with 223 teeth, all interlocking, all precisely engineered. The device calculated the position of the sun and moon. It predicted solar and lunar eclipses. It tracked the cycles of the Olympic Games and showed the phases of the moon simultaneously through a system of differential gears that your car still uses today when it takes a turn. European science wouldn't reach this level of astronomical calculation for another 1,500 years. The inscriptions on the back panel, only recently decoded through advanced imaging, turned out to be a full user manual. The device even had colored balls representing the planets. Fiery red for Mars, gold for the sun. And here's what keeps researchers awake at night. The Roman orator Cicero described a similar device in the 1st century BC, made by Archimedes, which means this wasn't a one-off invention. It belonged to an entire tradition of mechanical computing, a tradition from which only one example survived, sitting in a museum drawer for 2 years while everyone walked past it. Discovery number 2, Göbekli Tepe, Turkey. For most of the 20th century, historians agreed on one thing about the development of human civilization. First came farming, then came settlements, then came organized religion and monumental architecture, temples, carvings, sacred spaces. That was the sequence, that was the rule. Göbekli Tepe broke the rule completely. In 1994, German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt was surveying a hilltop in southeastern Turkey that local farmers had been plowing around for years, assuming it was just a Byzantine cemetery. He looked closer. He started digging. What he found beneath the soil was a complex of massive, carved stone pillars arranged in circles. some of them 6 meters tall and weighing up to 20 tons, covered in detailed relief carvings of animals, foxes, lions, vultures, scorpions, wild boar. The craftsmanship is extraordinary. The sheer scale is staggering. And the age, 11,600 years old. No, that's not a typo. Göbekli Tepe predates Stonehenge by 6,000 years. It predates the invention of writing by 6,000 years. It predates the wheel. It predates pottery. It predates agriculture. The people who built it were hunter-gatherers. They had no permanent settlements, no domesticated animals, no organized food supply. They were, by every definition we had, too primitive to build something like this. And yet they did. The pillars required quarrying, transporting, and raising stones weighing up to 20 tons without metal tools, without the wheel, without any of the technology we assumed was necessary for this kind of construction. Here's what makes it stranger. Around 9000 BC, the site was deliberately buried. Someone carefully filled the entire complex with soil and rubble and walked away. It wasn't destroyed, it was preserved, hidden, intentionally placed underground for the next 11,000 years. Who buried it? Why? And what were they protecting it from? We don't know. What we know is that everything we thought about the timeline of human civilization needs to be reconsidered. Because the sequence wasn't farming first, then temples. At Göbekli Tepe, the temples came first, and we have no idea what that means. Discovery number 3. The Nazca Lines, Peru. The Nazca Desert in southern Peru is one of the driest places on Earth. Almost no wind, almost no rain. Temperatures that bake the ground into a hard, stable surface. It's also covered in drawings. Enormous drawings scratched into the desert floor by removing the reddish surface stones to reveal the pale yellow earth beneath. A hummingbird, 110 meters long. A spider 50 meters wide. A condor with a wingspan of over 130 meters. Geometric lines that stretch perfectly straight for miles across the desert. The Nazca people created them between 500 BC and 500 AD with sticks and rope, on flat ground, without any ability to see what they were making from above, because these images only make sense from the air. From ground level, they're just shallow trenches in the dirt, barely noticeable. You can walk across a Nazca line and not realize it. But from a few hundred meters up, suddenly a perfectly formed spider appears beneath you. Every curve precise, every proportion correct. American historian Paul Kosok discovered them in 1939 from a small aircraft. The engineering required to maintain perfectly straight lines across miles of uneven terrain is remarkable even by modern standards. Survey teams have tried to replicate the accuracy using period-appropriate tools, ropes, sticks, basic geometry, and confirmed it's possible. Difficult and time-consuming, but possible. What isn't possible to explain is the why. There are over 800 straight lines, 300 geometric figures, and 70 animal and plant designs. Some lines extend for 9 kilometers without a single deviation. Some point directly at astronomical events, the winter solstice, the rising of certain stars. The leading theory is that they were ritual pathways walked during ceremonies, not meant to be seen from above, but experienced from within. Others argue they were astronomical calendars. Some researchers connect them into underground water sources, the lines marking where water flows beneath the desert. None of these theories fully explains everything on the plateau. What we know for certain is this: a civilization with sticks and ropes in the middle of one of the world's most inhospitable deserts created a gallery of images that required either an aerial perspective to design or a level of mathematical and spatial reasoning that we still haven't fully accounted for, and they did it 2,000 years before anyone invented a way to see them properly. Discovery number 4. Sacsayhuaman, Peru. Stay in Peru, but move to the mountains above Cusco. At an altitude of 3,500 meters, on a steep hillside overlooking the old Inca capital, stands a fortress wall that engineers still cannot explain. Sacsayhuaman, the name means satisfied falcon in Quechua, was built by the Inca around the 15th century. The walls are constructed from massive limestone and andesite blocks, some of them weighing over 300 tons. The largest known block in the entire complex weighs an estimated 360 tons. For comparison, that's heavier than a fully loaded Boeing 747. The blocks were quarried from sites between 15 and 30 kilometers away. They were transported across mountainous terrain, across rivers, up steep inclines without the wheel, without iron tools, without draft animals strong enough to pull that weight. And when they arrived, they were fitted together. Not with mortar, not with any binding agent at all, just stone against stone, but fitted so precisely that in many places you cannot slide a piece of paper between the blocks. Some joints have up to 12 angles carved into them, interlocking with the neighboring stone in 3 dimensions. The fit is so exact that after 500 years of earthquakes, the Andes is one of the most seismically active regions on Earth. The walls of Sacsayhuaman have barely shifted, while Spanish colonial buildings, constructed nearby with mortar and smaller stones, repeatedly collapsed and were rebuilt. The Inca walls stood. Modern engineers have calculated that moving the largest blocks would have required thousands of workers and a system of ramps, ropes, and levers of extraordinary sophistication. The Inca had all of these things. What they didn't leave behind was any record of exactly how they did it. Spanish chroniclers who arrived in the 16th century described the walls as so astonishing that they attributed them to demons, because the alternative that human hands had done this seemed impossible. 500 years later, we've run out of better explanations. Discovery number 5. The Voynich manuscript. Every discovery on this list involves stone or metal or physical engineering. This one is just paper and ink, and it might be the most unsolvable mystery of all of them. In 1912, a Polish book dealer named Wilfrid Voynich purchased a collection of manuscripts from a Jesuit college in Italy. Among them was a small illustrated book, 240 pages, vellum pages, handwritten in an unknown script with hundreds of detailed illustrations, plants that don't match any known species, astronomical diagrams with unknown symbols, bathing women in elaborate tube systems, zodiac charts with unfamiliar figures, and page after page of dense flowing text in a writing system no one has ever seen before or since. Carbon dating placed the vellum, the material the pages are made from, at between 1404 and 1438. The ink is consistent with the same period. This is a 600-year-old book written in a language no one can read. And people have tried, seriously tried. During World War II, the U.S. Army's top codebreakers, the people who cracked Nazi encryption, attempted to decode the Voynich manuscript. They failed. NSA analysts attempted it during the Cold War. Academic linguists, cryptographers, and computer scientists have run the text through every known analytical framework. The text has patterns consistent with natural language. Certain symbols appear with the same statistical frequency as letters in real writing systems. It's not random, it's not gibberish. Something is encoded in it, but nobody knows what. Theories range from an elaborate hoax to a lost natural language to an early encryption system. In 2017, a researcher claimed to have identified the language as Proto-Romance, an early form of several European languages. The academic community was unconvinced. In 2019, an artificial intelligence system analyzed the text and concluded it was most consistent with Arabic or Hebrew, encoded in an unknown system. That also remains unverified. The Voynich manuscript currently sits in Yale University's Beinecke Rare Book Library. Anyone can view digitized copies online. Millions of people have looked at it. Thousands of researchers have studied it. No one has read a single sentence. Discovery number 6. Puma Punku, Bolivia back to stone. But this time, stone that does something that stone shouldn't be able to do. Puma Punku sits at an altitude of nearly 4,000 meters on the Bolivian Altiplano, a high, windswept plateau near the ancient city of Tiwanaku. The site dates to roughly 500 AD, though some geological analyses suggest certain elements are much older. What's scattered across Puma Punku looks, at first glance, like a field of ruins. Broken stone blocks, partially buried, arranged in no obvious pattern. Look closer, and the blocks become extraordinary. They are cut from red sandstone and hard andesite, being one of the hardest stones on Earth, with a rating that makes it nearly impossible to work with iron tools, let alone bronze or stone. Yet the blocks at Puma Punku are cut with perfect right angles, smooth flat surfaces, and most remarkably complex interlocking notches, channels, and H-shaped joints that fit together like machined components. Some of the cuts are so precise they appear to have been made with a saw or router rather than a hand tool. Straight lines run perfectly true for meters. Holes are drilled to consistent depths. Channels are cut at exact angles. One researcher described the stonework as looking like it was processed in a factory rather than carved in a field. The blocks were transported to the site from quarries between 10 and 90 kilometers away across a lake, across mountains, some of them weighing over 130 tons. No written records exist for Tiwanaku civilization. No images of their construction methods survive. The people who built Puma Punku didn't leave an instruction manual. What they left was the work itself. And the work suggests a level of precision stonemasonry that required either tools we haven't found or techniques we haven't identified. After more than a century of archaeological study, we have theories. We don't have answers. Discovery number 7. The Great Pyramid's hidden chambers. Everyone knows the Great Pyramid of Giza. Built around 2560 BC, standing for 4,500 years, it was the tallest structure on Earth for almost 4 millennia. But what most people don't know is that we still don't fully understand what's inside it. In 2017, the Scan Pyramids Project, a collaboration between Egyptian authorities, French, Japanese, and Canadian researchers, used muon tomography to scan the pyramid's interior. Muons are particles produced by cosmic rays that pass through solid matter differently depending on density. By measuring muon patterns on the other side of the pyramid, you can map what's inside. What they found was a large void, at least 30 meters long, sitting above the Grand Gallery, at a position and scale that doesn't correspond to any known chamber or passage in the pyramid. It's not a construction gap. It's not a known and structural feature. It's a space, possibly a room that no one has ever entered in 4,500 years. The Egyptian government has not yet approved drilling or direct access. The void has been confirmed by multiple independent teams using different scanning technologies. What's in there, nobody knows. The theories range from a stress-relieving architectural chamber to an undiscovered burial room to something the builders deliberately sealed and left. And that's the thing about the Great Pyramid that always gets lost in the familiar photographs and the tourist numbers and the sheer scale of the thing. We have not finished discovering it yet. After 4,500 years of human curiosity, wars, conquests, explorations, archaeological digs, and now particle physics, the pyramid still has a room we've never seen. Still waiting, still sealed, still silent. 7 discoveries. A corroded bronze computer. A temple older than agriculture. Desert drawings, visible only from the sky. Stone walls that outlasted every earthquake. A book no one can read. Precision stonework that looks machined. And a sealed room inside the most studied structure on Earth. None of these require extraordinary explanations. No lost magic. No outside intervention, just human beings in different centuries and different corners of the world doing things we haven't fully figured out how to replicate or explain. If that's the kind of history you want more of, subscribe to The Silent World. And tell me in the comments which of these 7 hit you hardest